What's up? It's Trey Harris here, wide receiver for Los Angeles Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein. I don't know why it always feels like May takes forever to get through. I'm not sure if because it's like the OTAs are at the end of the month, but there's not really that much going on because there's no contact during OTAs.
True.
We're weeks away from minicamp, but it kind of feels just a little bit further away from that. And then you go further to say like, okay, well then training camp is beyond that. I just need football, for the love of God. It's like, we're almost done with the NBA. The NHL finals are pretty much here. We're almost getting to that really bad period in June where nothing is going to be on besides baseball.
Yeah.
So for the absolute nutballs like me that enjoy footballs on their Thursdays, their Sundays, their Mondays, that itch is really going to be in full effect in the next couple of weeks. But outside of that, Dan Wolkenstein and I are back. He had apologies that we haven't gotten a chance to put out a show since last week, but we had a very engaging conversation last week, kind of really taking in the full picture of Chargers roster construction now that the NFL draft is over, now that free agency is gone, and now that we're kind of in the nitty-gritty now of OTAs and finally starting to see these guys out there with pads move around, hearing some comments from players, even at this stage of the game as far as just expectations goes for the team. I had a great conversation as it relates to the offense. Today is going to be an interesting one as it relates to the defense because we talked about so much that needed to change coming away from the Greg Roman system, the Mike Devlin offensive line, keeping Justin Herbert upright, adding extra weapons around him, rebuilding a run game. And of course, now that whole transition to say now you've got Mike McDaniel, you've reloaded your offensive line, you've added weapons for Justin Herbert, and now you look to the other side of the ball on defense, and it's not so much about turnover. It's more about just keeping things relatively the same from the defense that Jesse Minter built. So this is an interesting one because I'm really going to enjoy this. It's going to feel almost polar opposite in terms of the way that we approach this conversation. But Dan Wolkenstein, obviously, before we get started, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to the weekend. It's been a whirlwind over here, but to your point, I am so starved for Chargers football to get back. OTAs have begun. You're starting to see people get paid. Shout out Derwin James. Rightly deserved. Tuli probably on the horizon here soon as well. I think this conversation will feel very opposite of what it felt like a week ago when we talked about offense. Like I feel like a week ago it was, it's broke, fix it. This week it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And so whatever you can do to keep this train moving on the track without changing too much, maybe you can add some wrinkles and some pizzazz with Chris O'Leary and some maybe more aggression, more blitzes possibly. But for the most part, it's can we get the band back together and can we run this thing back without a hiccup, going from the Jesse Minter era to the Chris O'Leary era. So we'll go position by position. We got the edge, inter-defensive line, linebackers, corners, and safeties. And we'll kind of go through each position group, and we'll discuss, have they done enough? Is this what we need it to be? Is there room for improvement? And what do we see as kind of the barometers for this group in 2026? We talked about the offense and what the floor and the ceiling could be. Could it be the same in 2026 for the Chargers defense versus 2025? Lots to discuss here, Jake. I haven't got a chance to ask you yet, my friend, my dear, dear friend, Jake. How are you today?
Appreciate you throwing that one in there, Dan. Appreciate you throwing that one in there for sure. No, doing good. It's been a heck of a week myself, but obviously always good to come back on here and talk football, especially at this part of the season with each and every one of you. It's just that time. It's that time to break everything down. We're kind of take a consensus of everything. Everybody's emotions is on high right now because this is what always happens during the offseason. When you actually get a chance to kind of peel back the layers of the onion and really dissect it, yes, nobody's hitting anybody right now. I don't care. It's not going to diminish my feelings towards getting excited about this football team because, especially as you said, Dan, it's kind of a high bar to set given the fact of what you had with Jesse Minter to say, can you be better overall? Maybe, maybe not. Could you be better in certain areas? Yeah, I think that there's definitely areas of improvement that you can find. But it's more so to say, Chris O'Leary coming in, who once coached under Jesse Minter, was once part of the Jesse Minter tree a while ago, now gets to come over and take the reins, is very familiar with this team overall. You saw the excitement of everyone when it was announced that he was coming back as the defensive coordinator. And we'll have plenty more to say about that because the consistent word around Chris O'Leary in general has just been energy, energy, energy. That's how everything goes as it relates to the transition. And there's a few more nuggets in there that we'll probably be able to dissect in this show, but it'll be more apparent as we see mini-camp, training camp take place, as far as just some of the little tweaks that Chris O'Leary is going to make to the once-upon-a-time Jesse Minter defense.
For sure. So we'll get into all of it and kind of the biggest shifts and changes for this roster and for the staff in 2026. But Jake, before we do that, let's pay the bills. We got to talk about our great, great friends over at FanDuel before we get into it. Let's talk about them.
Yes, the betting does not stop for the NFL, even in the offseason, even in the state that we are all in right now. And FanDuel gives you the capability to stay in the action with NFL futures right now. You can get the Los Angeles Chargers at plus 185 to win the AFC West, at plus 1,500 to win the Super Bowl. So there is value there waiting for anybody who is wanting to ride with the Bolt fam. And if you are one of those people, make sure you go on over to FanDuel today. Make sure to use the promo code Chargers LAFB for your chance to win at FanDuel and let them know that Chargers Unleashed sent you.
From Minter is coming to now Chris O'Leary, your new defensive coordinator. I think continuity aplenty.
Yes.
Which was, I think, much to the appreciation of many a fan and player and staff and coach. This is arguably the biggest change, and I don't think it's close. Going from Jesse Minter, which we've all said from the jump, from the second he came to Los Angeles, that his time here was borrowed. And in fact, it was. O'Leary's got some big shoes to fill. You saw his success in college when he went back to be a DC for a year. And I'm sure that was not by coincidence that he went back to college to get that DC experience. He's learning under Jesse Minter. He learned under Jesse Minter. He still sees him as a mentor, and he has no problem calling that out, that he is taking a lot of what Jesse Minter has done and doing his best to, give it its justice and some.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we could have rose-colored glasses and say that nothing is going to change, nothing's going to skip a beat, and he's going to be just as good, maybe better. We've got the next coming, But real talk, it's going to be real hard for Chris O'Leary to reach the plateau that Jesse Minter was on, arguably since he came here. Do you see that happening? Do you see the nucleus? Do you see everything else trickling down enough to where we're not going to see that much of a drop-off? Or is this a big concern for you going into the season? Big story.
It's not a concern. It's not a concern. I think it felt different when we were leading up to when we were going through all the defensive coordinator interviews that were taking place. And in reality, Chris O'Leary was kind of like the guy who snuck in at the 11th hour that nobody was talking about. Remember, all of our focus was elsewhere as far as what we thought was a preferred situation for them. You were trying to put the pieces together to say, like, okay, he's got familiarity with Harbaugh here, or he learned from here, or this guy's had success here. And then all of a sudden it was like overnight, out of nowhere, without really any announcement, Chargers have signed Chris O'Leary to be their defensive coordinator. And then when you stand back and you look at it for a second, it makes so much sense because he's already built up so much rapport with that team from being the safety coach 2 years ago. I think probably one of the biggest things that gets me is that if you go back and you listen to his first press conference, not as defensive coordinator, but when he was the safeties coach in 2024, he explained to everybody prior to being hired by the Chargers, Chris O'Leary had never spoken to Jim Harbaugh. He was obviously brought on from Jesse Minter's experience with him, their familiarity, very long standing with them in the coaching ranks over the years prior. You fast forward to a year, end of the 2024-2025 season, when Chris O'Leary now goes to Western Michigan. And I don't have the entire endorsement in front of me because it is a lot, but to go from never having any communication with Jim Harbaugh to the amount of credibility that he gave Chris O'Leary after he took that job at Western Michigan, the endorsement that he gave him was extremely telling. So there was an impact that was made from Chris O'Leary in that 1 year with the Chargers as the safeties coach that obviously left an impression with Jim Harbaugh. Obviously the familiarity, the understanding what Jesse Minter does well, how Chris O'Leary can adopt that goes all well into it. But you can obviously see that there was something done in that year as far as coach to coach goes. And obviously his relationship with the players beyond just the safety position, because it seems like he has been able to really show what he wants to do and have an emotional impact, bring the energy to the rest of the defense there. When you look at it like that, it really makes all the sense in the world. Now, to your point, Dan, is it big shoes to fill? Absolutely. Is there still question marks? Is there a belief to think that this is not necessarily going to be a seamless transition? Sure. For a guy stepping into this type of a role and making the jump like that over a 2-year period. But remember, Jesse Minter followed kind of a similar rise in the ranks during him, and that didn't turn out too bad. So I'm excited for it. The players have obviously had that bond with him for a number of years now, and I'm really excited to see what tweaks he's going to make to Jesse Minter's defense.
You know, there's a lot of talk about continuity and familiar faces and whatnot. And of course, Chris O'Leary has that. He's worked with Jim Harbaugh. He's been hired by Jim Harbaugh now twice. He's worked with these players now on 2 different stints. He's very familiar with the Jesse Minter defense and runs the same defense. So the whole defense is able to continue down its same design path, which I think is critical considering what the roster is built for. Like, it was tailor-made for this, and it has been brought in roster-wise by Joe Ortiz to fit this scheme. And so the runway was smooth. Like, he was able to take off, glide through this thing nicely. Now, the part that's kind of interesting now is the pieces around him, right? Like, Odafe Owe ain't there anymore. And they went down the first-round draft pick track to get...
Not a bad replacement, though, I'll tell you what. Not a bad replacement.
We will talk about it. So, in my opinion, like, the 2 biggest changes of this entire defense were how can you replace Jesse Minter and what that drop-off would look like. And if they can't keep Odafe Owe, how will you fill those shoes? Will they go the veteran market? Will they go trade? Will they go high draft pick? The answer was Hakeem Ezador, which you and I both have been on record for weeks, months now saying that was our pick, given all that we knew. That's what we hoped for at pick 22. But Jake, let's start with the interior defensive line for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yep.
Some changes there too. And so let's get into this group first. The big boys up front. Jake, some new faces here. Tier Tart, the slap heard around the world. Of course, had to put that there.
Dan was responsible for these slides, by the way. This is the first time I've seen them. And the fact that all he has in the Tier Tart slot is not even tired, just his hand, which has become the most famous hand in Los Angeles.
Right?
It's just the slap that was heard around the world in week 1. And it was a great shot.
Yeah. So Jamar Caldwell had a stellar rookie campaign. Dalvin Tomlinson brought in from Arizona. They got and signed Nick Barrett. And then the up-and-coming Justin Aboigbe there as well. Again, this is the interior defensive line. Jake, what do you make of this group compared to that of last year? Again, not much change, but still some change. You're hopeful for again another rise from a Boygby, a continued rise from Jamar Caldwell, who was stellar in his rookie year. Tyler Tart got paid, stayed. He should be good. Dalvin Tomlinson kind of had a down year last year, but you're hoping for the bounce back. He was a pressure menace, in my opinion. Nick Barrett, who a lot of people see as possibly the steal of the draft for this Chargers team. What do you make of this group versus the year prior?
Yeah, you have to start with the man in the middle because you go all the way back to the end of the January when the Chargers season was done after the playoff loss to New England. They made sure that Tyler Tart did not see free agency.
Out quick.
Sign him to an extension, so now you've locked that priority down. That was one of the biggest priorities going into free agency. Joe Ortiz made sure that that was not something that he had to worry about by the time that March came around. You bring in Dalvin Tomlinson essentially as the Deshaun Hand replacement, which Deshaun Hand was great as it relates to pass rush. Dalvin Tomlinson obviously is just he takes up 2 seats on an airplane. He's just a mammoth of a man. And so pairing him next to Tyler Tart, where you can have a guy who's a little bit more versatile with Tyler Tart in terms of getting after the quarterback, obviously also great in run defense. But now you just have 2 big guys who are just committed to stopping the run. Jamari Caldwell and Justin Aboigbe, I think there is your second and third year opportunities for elevated positions for them. And again, you go back to how they have continued to rise and the investment that Joe Ortiz has continuously done now 3 years straight in adding to the defensive line in the NFL draft. He's creating a rotation, nice little blend between young guys, veteran players to really round out this defense. With Jamari Caldwell, who I think had a great rookie season, even as essentially as a rotational piece to that defensive line, he was able to find a way to have an impact. Justin Aboigbe himself had a breakout game there in the middle of the season that was very nice, and I think that they're going to continue to want to elevate his responsibilities in this line. And as you mentioned, Dan, Nick Barrett. Some say it's a huge steal. You just talk about a guy who plays nasty, great against the run, has some pass rush juice that you can tap into to make that a little bit better. But in terms of getting after and what you need to be responsible for, I think this is a great combination on the defensive line that you've seen built out for the Chargers, not just in free agency, but by the NFL draft over the last 3 years with the Aboigbe, the Caldwell, now the Nick Barrett pick. I really like the round out, just how this group has rounded out.
It's interesting. I think there's a big bet on Dalvin Tomlinson, right? He had kind of a down year, he had a down year last year in Arizona. But prior to that year, I mean, we're looking at some of these grades for him or just total numbers, if you will. Either way, if I go back to 2025, so a year ago, he had 14 pressures, right? Not great. And his grades were not great. But then you go back to the 7 years prior-ish, 6 years, 36 pressures in 2024, 36 in 2023, 29 in 2022, 21 in 21, and 28 in 2020. So the trend line tells you that last year was a hiccup and was not an alignment for him and that scheme in Arizona. If you can get a bounce back from Dalvin and get anywhere close to that, along with Jamari Caldwell and Tyler Tart, that trio is fierce. So that is deep if you consider what Aboigbe looked like last year with, I believe he had 5 or 6 sacks, and Nick Barrett, who it can have time to develop. In my opinion, this has a potential to be certainly better than last year. The ceiling for me is much higher than last year. Can they get there? I'm not sure. The floor might be, I don't know. The floor depends on what you look at Dalvin Tomlinson versus Deshaun Hand. In my opinion, that's probably where
take your pick as far as the skill set, because each guy is good at different things. So what do you need? And if we're looking to replace the pass rush of Deshaun Hand, I think that Aboigbe, Caldwell can do that for you.
You look at the beef that they have, though. Caldwell, Tart, and Tomlinson. Those are some 3 houses. Mm-hmm. And you think about it, Caldwell's probably better. Aboigbe's probably better. You think Tart's probably better with another year. You bring in Tomlinson, that should be a leg up, and then Nick Barrett for depth. I like this group. I think it's a well-rounded group. I think it has a good combination of both pass rush and run support. I like it. I don't really have many complaints, right? If you look at the floor, can they improve the floor through free agency? Maybe there's some veterans out there that they could get if the price is right. But I don't know if you want to take away the development of these younger guys here. So I don't see it anymore. Yeah. And I think that ship was kind of sailed once they brought in Mesdor, which we'll talk about here in a second.
I think there's one X factor here, Dan, that we need to highlight. You talk about the offensive side of the ball, everything kind of circles around Mike McDaniel, Butch Berry for how they're going to really reshape that offense. A year ago, I would have, whenever we talked about defense, we would always be talking about Jesse Minter and Steve Klingscale. For this defense, there's 4 coaches that I'm going to mention. And I think that Mike Elston is an unsung hero of this defense that deserves some flowers. Because when you see the way that he has been responsible over the last 2 years, now going on 3, on developing young talent, namely Aboigbe and Caldwell, I'm excited to see what the hell he's going to do with Nick Barrett because of what we've already seen from those other players. You can tell that he's got this locked in. He has gotten this locked in, and the proof has been in the pudding for how we have seen this defensive line specifically play. So Mike Elston has been really an unsung hero on this defense. Again, everything was always headlined by Jesse Minter last year. But when you really start breaking this down, especially in a turnover like this, to say, okay, the coaches that remain, and even some that ended up replacing, namely Chris O'Leary when he went to Western Michigan, because that'll be one that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. This is something that we have not gotten a chance to talk about when it relates to the Chargers as a team. And this is where that X factor comes back again as it relates to coaching. It's a luxury that outside of the players themselves that you don't often get a chance to take sidebars on and talk about. In this particular case, there's 4 that I'm going to talk about. We already talked about Chris O'Leary. Mike Elston's the next one. Just wait till we get a little bit more down the line.
And think about it, right? You think about the studs that they have in the coaching ranks. Like Chris O'Leary was the safeties guy who got a promotion, then brought back as a DC. So you got the DC and safeties connected there. We've talked about Klingscale, which we'll talk about here in a bit, right? Like we got some dudes who all of which are kind of DC candidates. We thought Klingscale was going to be the DC if they went internally until they do a curveball and we'll go externally internal when they bring in O'Leary.
Yeah.
So they have some fantastic coaches on the defense, which is why they've been able to get more with quote unquote less in years past, what you're hoping for in 2026 as well. Jake, let's go to the edge position, which I think probably is one of the most exciting groups on this team now.
Might be the most important one now.
Yes. And I also think it was the one that people were most concerned about going into the draft and just free agency, just because there were so many unknowns with what happens with Khalil Mack. Is Owe going to stay? Do they need to go sign somebody? What happens to some of the veterans? Like, who knows? But it's kind of rounded into shape here pretty good. So if you look at this group now, the trio, of course, Khalil Mack, Tuli Tuipulotu, and Akeem Mesidor, now after your first round pick selection. Bud Dupree's still on the roster. Dame Tucker. So there wasn't only O'Leary that comes from Western Michigan, but Dame Tucker comes as well, which you've seen praise from Khalil Mack on. And Kyle Kennard, same thing. Who will we see that Aboigbe type jump in year 2? People are excited to see him in pads. The top 3, in my opinion, like this is as clean of a top 3 edge group as you can find in the NFL. Find me a better trio, more well-rounded than this trio. Maybe you can go to Philly, maybe you can go to SF, whatever, right? But like for the most part, this is pretty damn good. Jake, what do you think about this group? Do you see anything externally coming? What are some of the concerns you have, if any, for this group in 2026?
I mean, those top 3 is to have Akeem Mesidor, and again, you start with this because I still see that there are a lot of people out there that want to poo-poo the Chargers pick for the fact that they selected a 25-year-old edge rusher. Screw that. I don't care. If it means that you have a championship window that starts right now with Khalil Mack and Tooley and extends for at least the next 4 to 5 years to say that Tooley and Akeem Mesidor is your future at edge, I'm fine with that. Just fine with that. In reality, you're thinking that the championship window is right now. I'm not thinking about Akeem Mesidor's second contract or how old he's going to be by that time that rolls around. And the fact that he has put in the time and work during his college career, and the fact that he is as polished as a pass rusher right now for what he brings to the game, and he gets to play behind Khalil Mack and Tooley, this is still a guy who is going to be edge 3 coming into this role. But he's going to be taking over the Odafe Oweh role. I'm not worried about that at all. You want to talk about someone who just comes in that is terrific against the run and the pass, has just a motor that does not stop, is violent in getting after the quarterback, is able to disrupt an offense in a multitude of different ways, and you're having him learn under one of the best pass rushers in the game? Like, come on. Like, let's put an end to that right now. Let's jump to number 45. Let's talk about Tooley. The biggest question about him coming into last year was how was he going to supplant Joey Bosa? Because when Joey Bosa was healthy, he was one of the best edge setters in the league. I think Tooley stepped up to the plate very nicely. Remember, even during the period of time when Khalil Mack was out for his, 4 to 5 game stretch after he had hurt his arm, Tooley was the only one that you were really getting any type of pass rush from before Odafe Oweh was brought in by that trade. So again, this trio in general, and then of course you go with a 13-year veteran in Khalil Mack. Essentially, this is going to be his swan song. But there doesn't look to be 1 ounce of effort, juice, motivation that has left him whatsoever. I think he may even come into this season with more juice than we've seen from him in the last 2 years. And that's saying something, maybe considering the fact that it is his last year. So what do they say always about like a cornered lion is dangerous, or a caged animal is dangerous when you back him into a corner like that? This is going to be the swan song. How is he going to go out? I'm excited for that. And then to have a rotation of Nadeem Tucker, who just made so much sense as an undrafted free agent, considering the fact that of the season that he had at Western Michigan under Chris O'Leary. That just made too much sense when he hit the undrafted free agent pool. He definitely has juice, did great production in his final year at Western Michigan in order to put up some of the stats that he has. So again, as a rotational piece, I love that idea as far as just having guys that can get after the quarterback. And again, Kyle Kennard, now 2 years removed from his time in South Carolina, who was essentially doing the exact same things that Nadeem Tucker was doing, but didn't get much of a shake as far as his rookie season goes. There was a few things that he had to iron out for himself. I'm actually expecting a nice jump from him in year 2. I think he's coming into training camp, putting on some extra weight. I think his skill set's going to be more refined in terms of what he does as a pass rusher. So you've elevated this room in a number of different ways outside of just to say, oh, okay, they added Akeem Mesidor. No, Tooley has gotten better. Tooley has stepped up to the plate as a pass rusher and a run defender. And then you've added more pass rush juice that you didn't have before, really. Bud Dupree wasn't adding it. Kyle Kennard didn't really add much to your edge room last year. But now you have a nice rotation of guys that in a number of different ways in their own type of fashion can get after the quarterback. So is it one of the most important positions on the roster? Absolutely, because we know how much in Jesse Minter's defense that pass rush made everything else in the defense effective. So how is it going to work with Chris O'Leary now? I think especially when you hear like Deion Henley talking about things as far as like, what are the changes? He basically said fast and violent, which is crazy when you consider the way that Jesse Minter had guys playing. But remember, Jesse Minter didn't even blitz that much in certain games. It progressively got more, but for a long time in that first year, especially, he wasn't one of the guys that blitzed that much. He relied on other things to make that defense work.
There's a lot of disguise. Yep.
Imagine the fact, and again, I think it's going to be very similar for how Jesse Minter wanted to get Owe, Tooley, and Mack on the field at the same time. Be prepared to see Mack, Tooley, and Akeem Mesidor on the field at the same time. He will find ways to make that work, and that is going to be disruptive.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I think there are question marks around Kennard. Again, you're hopeful, right? But that's just not a sure thing. Dame Tucker, I mean, people are quickly forgetting that just a year ago with Chris O'Leary, the kid had 51 pressures, 12 sacks, and 36 hurries. The defensive grade overall of a 90.6 and a 92.7 pass rush grade for the season. So that could very well be a steal for UDFA. Now, same question for edge as I had for interior defensive line. I do think Bud Dupree is in the hot seat.
Absolutely.
I do think that if you were to add some truth serum into the veins of lots of these players and coaches, are there free agents out there who might be able to produce more than Bud Dupree currently? My answer is yes. No, I know the coaching staff loves Bud Dupree. I know he's a glue guy. He's great in run support. I get it. But if you're Joe Ortiz and we've seen how he addresses the bottom of the roster and keeps churning, that's a position group that is like red flag of that's one to watch. Now, who could they replace him with? You know, are any of these names super exciting? I don't know. I would love to see Kyle Van Noy back here. I think he'd be awesome in this defense. There's still Jadeveon Clowney. You still got a Joey Bosa potential reunion, which I don't really see happening. You know, there's a bunch of dudes out there. Be on the lookout for that group. And it might not happen before preseason, but I wouldn't be surprised if that number changes. And when you think of maybe the 53, will there be 5 edge players or 6? A question for later. Next position, Jake, linebacker. This one, in my opinion, just being honest, probably, and this is not meant to throw shade at any particular position, but if you were to, again, provide truth serum to fans and folks out there, which position group on defense seemingly is the weakest of the group? It might be this one. It might be this one. Safeties, I think they're on lock. Corner, I think everyone is very bullish on what they have at corner. Edge, we talked about it ad nauseum. Into defensive line, I think we're pretty good there. But again, Deion Henley didn't have a great season last year. Do I think he's a great player? Yes. Did he have a lot of shit going on outside of football? Absolutely. Could I see him bounce back? Of course. Denzel Perry, we know what he's like. We know what he's good at and what he's bad at. Troy Dye, we're hoping for a kind of continued come up for him. He's played very well. He's been a glue guy for sure. But I wouldn't consider, and I don't think they would consider him like a top tier linebacker. Delshon Phillips was an outstanding, arguably the best special teamer in NFL last year. Can he step up in the linebacker role with more time? I don't know. Junior Colson, fantastic in college, seemingly perfect for this defense. Hasn't sniffed the field because of injuries and whatnot. And Marlowe Wax, lots of people love Marlowe Wax, but go back and look at the stats of Marlowe Wax. Whether or not he played or not doesn't really matter. We're banking on the potential of a lot of this, right? We're banking on the potential of Junior Colson, the potential of Marlowe Wax, a bounce back of Deion Henley, Denzel Perriman hopefully can stay healthy, and a come up for Delshon Phillips at linebacker. That's just being real. Could they do it? 100%. But in my opinion, the one that is least set in stone position-wise, I think it's this group.
Interesting when you compare it to the other positions for your statement, because I want to make sure that this is clear. When you're comparing it to those other position groups and considering it the weakest out of those. Now, I'm not saying that you're wrong, and I'm not saying that's not a fair assessment either. But I think this core group, there wasn't much turnover in the linebacker room at all. These guys are essentially what you had last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a variety of different ways, this group excelled expectations. And I'll say it like this. You know what you had in Deion Henley. You know how important Denzel Perryman was to your run defense. That was evident when he was out on his 2-game crap suspension. I think Troy Dye has developed into such a vital third linebacker for you.
I agree.
I will not forget, and I highlighted it when it happened during week 3 of the Denver game. There was a critical offensive possession that Troy Dye chased down Bo Nix that prevented him from getting a first down and extending that drive to force Denver to punt, which essentially gave the Chargers that final possession to go.
Did he also have like a game-ending interception in the season last year? I want to say it was against Minnesota, maybe.
I can't remember where it was specifically, but in general, I think that he has stepped up to, in big time fashion to be your third linebacker. Del'Shawn Phillips, when Ryan Fitkin was looking to say, like, what the hell is happening with my special teams this year? Because that was definitely a down unit. Del'Shawn Phillips turned out to be the guy that was the ace.
Yep.
Became an all-pro on special teams last year. We remember the Dallas game very well. We asked Del'Shawn Phillips about that. If he listened to Troy Aikman to say, when he said, Kevontae Turpin's really getting sick and tired of seeing Del'Shawn Phillips on kickoff returns because he was always the first guy that was down there. And then Marlowe Wax, as you said, there's something to mold there. Was that like a huge impact last year? Not really. Preseason was nice. End of the season when the starters were pulled was nice, but there's something that you can build out of that. Obviously, Junior Colson is the biggest question mark here. For everything that was expected of him to come over in a system that he was so familiar with during college, and we just really haven't gotten to see him at all. Can't even say the best version of him. We've barely even gotten a chance to see Junior Colson at all. So it's interesting because you've always liked to kind of use that little anecdote whenever you kind of go into the next season to say, oh, well, the Chargers have all these draft picks and Junior Colson because they really didn't have him during his rookie year. You haven't had Junior Colson really for 2 years.
Yep.
And it's still one player that you're waiting to see. And again, we go back to this as it relates to coaching because you move on from Navarro Bowman, who did a fantastic job coaching up this group last year. Obviously left it for personal reasons, but they go and they replace it with another former player again, one that was very familiar with Chris O'Leary and Sean Spence, former player of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was linebackers coach at Western Michigan even before the year that Chris O'Leary got there. And then he brings them over to the Chargers to coach up this group. Again, namely, you talk about the comments made by Deion Henley just a couple days ago as far as what the expectations are for Chris O'Leary's defense. Violent and fast. It's basically how he said it. He didn't want to give everything away, but that's just the gist of what he wanted to put out there. So I want to say that there's a lot of still, I think, hidden potential in this linebacker group. I think it outperformed expectations last year for sure. And it's something that you can really look to build on.
I agree. I get the potential's there. Reason for excitement? Sure. But I also think it's fair to say that this is the least proven group on the roster.
Mm-hmm. That I can understand.
Now, could they do it? 100%. And yes, to be clear, am I saying they are weak? No, I'm saying the weakest, right? Like if you had a class full of 10 kids and all of them were A students, we had one B player. Doesn't mean a B player is an F player. It just means he's a B student in comparison. Okay, Jake, moving on. Secondary.
Whew.
This is where it gets fun. This is where it gets fun. And this is where you have a good little blend here. So some names here you might not be familiar with or may have forgotten. Obviously, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, Dante Jackson. Dante Jackson was one of the top cornerbacks in the league last year. Dean Leonard, who I've always liked. Unfortunately, he's gotten injured quite a bit. Special teams ace, but I think he has the physicality and the length to be really good in this system. Nico Reed, who was a fan favorite, a Jake favorite throughout all of camp and the season last year. Eric Rogers, who balled out during preseason, only to have an unfortunate injury that took about the entire season. And then you go to the UDFAs, and don't look now, but an Avery Smith kid's looking pretty good too. So you have this
should be on the early list of potential UDFAs to make the final cut.
Talk about it. So, in my opinion, you have a pretty good blend here, right? Like, I think Tarheeb is great. I think he's fantastic. Dante Jackson never changed. Cam Hart, stay healthy, please, and you'll be fine. Nico Reed, I think, is on the come up for sure. And if Eric Rogers can do what Eric Rogers did last year during preseason, the sky is the limit for this kid. Because, dude, he was at 3 interceptions. Like, the guy went nuclear. To me, like, this group is very well-rounded. You've got guys who play outside, who can play inside, who can play both. You've got guys who can do special teams assistance as well. Like, that's what you need. You've got a ton of youth here as well, outside of Dante Jackson, who's not even old, but comparatively speaking. So, again, like, hats off to the crew. Hats off to Joe Ortiz for the drafting and the free agency picks. Like, to me, they've nailed it with this group. And I'm not going to say 10 out of 10, no notes, but like solid 8 or 9. Like, I feel good about it. And considering the salary cap associated with this, they are far exceeding the money that they are being paid. For sure. No question about it. Especially Dante Jackson. My goodness.
Yeah, let's remember, you lose Benjamin St-Juste in free agency, but you didn't bring in another cornerback to replace him either in free agency or the NFL draft outside of Avery Smith being in the undrafted free agent pool. Honestly, I think they like what they've got in Nico Reed and Eric Rogers.
Yeah.
Remember how many defensive backs they actually kept on the roster last year, Dan?
Was it 11?
It was 12.
It was 10 or 11. Was it 12?
It was 12.
Whoa.
You had 7 corners and you had 5 safeties that were kept last year. And they even had Eric Rogers essentially making the roster because they didn't even want to lose him, even though he had just injured himself and was out for the entirety of the year. They're like, 6'2", big body cornerback that goes out and plays like that. Let's just dig into that a little bit. He was only the second corner since 2023 that allowed no receptions on 5 or more targets and had 2 interceptions in that Saints preseason game. Big body cornerbacks that come out like that make a statement like that, there's obviously something outside of that game that Klink saw, that Minter saw, that Harbaugh saw to say, yeah, no, I don't care that he's injured. We're not letting this guy get away from us. And then Nico Reed, who had a fantastic preseason, especially in the Hall of Fame game. I think during the duration of the preseason, if I remember correctly, it was 3 receptions on 10 targets, obviously had the interception in the Hall of Fame game. Played 5 regular season games, had one of the best pass breakups that you'll ever see against Aaron Rodgers in that Pittsburgh game. That was just beautiful timing on his part.
That was a deep shot.
I think that they firmly believe that they can step up into the role lost by Benjamin St-Juste. I think that they have a plan for them. Does that mean that we should all be focusing our time to say, oh yeah, it's definitely going to be a cornerback selection for the Chargers in 2027? Maybe you start saying that right now. But you add into there another year under the belt for Cam Hart with Tarheeb still. As you mentioned, Dante Jackson, Dean Leonard has found himself a nice special teams niche in this roster and at that position. But you go back to what's been really the root development of all of this? Steve Klink's without question. And again, the fact of his mentality, wanting every defensive back and corner to basically learn to play every position, to be ready for any potential injuries that happen out there. He always has his guys coming ready to play. That's something that I don't even remember. You go back to the 2006 defense, I don't even remember the secondary being that good to say, even in the high-flying days of when Antonio Cromartie was getting 10 interceptions or it was Quentin Jammer on the other side, you never felt really that outside of your starters that you had a good group of corners. Here you have a very deep, young, versatile group of corners by a fantastic secondary coach. So, and we'll talk about the safeties in a second, but in terms of the secondary in general and how it's been built out both by player and coach alike, you couldn't ask for anything better, really. Outside of bringing in another player right now, you really couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the safeties then, which again,
Let's talk about it.
This is a fun group to chat about. And like, you know, we could sit here and nitpick, right? But when you have arguably the best safety in the NFL, who just got paid, Derwin James, when you have Elijah Molden, who I think is very good, Swiss Army knife for sure. The Uncle himself, and Tony Jefferson, who's aging like a fine wine, who always is in the right place, right time. And then RJ Mickens, who quietly had a fantastic rookie season. And again, talk about steals. He was projected like a 3rd, 4th round pick last year. Picked way later in day 3. Kendall Williamson, big special teams contribution. The teams loved him. And then Genesis Smith, drafted along with Miles Purchase, who's, again, been with this team for a few minutes. They've been high on him as well. So, again, I think they have a great blend of veterans, of stars, and of developmental players that can come up and produce and challenge for a position on the roster. Do I think all of these are going to make the roster? No. But this is the group you have to choose from. Imagine it being 5. Let's just say it's 5 for now. You got Derwin, you've got Elijah, you've got Tony Jefferson, you've got RJ Mickens, and it's probably going to be between Smith, Purchase, and Williamson for that final spot.
I mean,
that'll be a fun one to watch.
But you kind of have a leg up in that position. But in general,
well, you think, but like Kendall Williamson's been pretty darn good, and so yes, you think that Genesis Smith has a leg up because he was drafted, but this team has not brought in players that they've drafted before. Like, that's not a new thing.
It's true.
I wouldn't be surprised if Kendall Williamson
starts. I don't think that's happening to Genesis Smith.
You don't think so?
No.
You think he overtakes Kendall Williamson if it's up between those two? Yes. I'm talking purely special team stuff too.
Yes. And I know, again, you take away maybe next to Delshon Phillips, Kendall Williamson was probably one of your better special teams players that you had on the field last year. Not trying to take away any contribution in that. But let me start by digging into this, and then I'll get to that point. This group is so fun to dissect, number one. The competition in general for this group for this upcoming season is going to be insane. Obviously, Derwin Moneybag James, you don't have to worry about him. He's most likely going to retire as a Charger for the next 3 years, stuck with the team. It's fantastic. Tony Jefferson, who never should have been off the final 53-man roster last year. No. Still don't understand that decision way back when, but thank God you're able to keep him, because coming back and contributing for 13 games the way he did just added another level of intensity to this safety group. RJ Mickens, I want to highlight these 3 players first because the Chargers had 3 safeties who were in the top 30 in coverage last year. Derwin James was number 8. RJ Mickens was 17. Tony Jefferson, I think, was at 26. 3 safeties in the top 30. And one of them being a rookie season. Derwin playing all season. Tony Jefferson had 13 games. RJ Mickens had 12.
One's a rookie, one's 40. The other one's an all-pro.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good. And you didn't even say anything about Elijah Molden, who obviously had a down year in 2025, battled a number of injuries. But go back to 2024. When he was acquired in that with that six round pick trade, literally right before week 1, he had a terrific 2024 season. It was evident when he was not out there how much your safeties were struggling at that point in time. Also, remember, who was his safeties coach in 2024? Oh, yeah, it was Chris O'Leary. But you talk about the transition again, Dan. Here's a number that'll jump out to you. When Chris O'Leary left, safeties coach that replaced him was Adam Fuller out of Florida State. Chris O'Leary left after a season in which he had the Chargers safety group finishing third in 2024 in a coverage. Where do you think that Adam Fuller had this group finish in 2025?
Oh, ooh, this is spicy. Do tell.
It's not 3 and it's not 2, but it's in the top 3. This safety group finished number 1 in coverage. They were second also in fewest first downs allowed with 25. Second in the league as a safety group with interceptions in 10. To think that you go from Chris O'Leary to then bringing in Adam Fuller and to say, oh, it's a high bar to accomplish in terms of some of those numbers that Chris O'Leary.
Yeah.
Adam Fuller did it. Adam Fuller did it. And now you add to this group a young center fielder like Genesis Smith in the 4th round.
I like Genesis Smith.
I do too. I've heard all the criticism about the tackling, but in terms of a true center fielder, Dan, and we talked about this after the draft was over, it brings me back to the conversations that people had about, and again, I'm not matching it player for player. I'm talking about the strengths of each player. I remember when Nasir Adderley was drafted for the Chargers.
Man, don't give me
Daniel Jeremiah's reaction to that was to say it's the perfect combination of strong safety, versatile chess piece like Derwin James to a true center fielding free safety like Nasir Adderley. The elements of what Genesis Smith brings to the table is that. So again, you want to talk about the versatility that you've now created in this safety group with a good mixture of veteran and young players and being coached up the way that they have over the last couple of years. The safety group is on lock, in my opinion. I am so excited to see what this camp battle is going to be like over the next couple of weeks because it's going to be vicious. But more importantly, I'm more excited to see what Adam Fuller is going to do with them in his second season as safeties coach.
As we went through this, Jake, like it became pretty clear just how stark a difference the roster is top to bottom. We did it last week or the week before with the offense and then now defense, and looking how deep this roster is top to bottom now with this new GM. It's a whole different world. And we had talked about for years under Tom Telesco, the underbelly being the weakest point of this team. It's so top heavy. We've all talked about it. But what Joe Ortiz has done to just add strength after strength and churning the bottom of the roster and keeping that group elevated and, competitors welcome, all the cliches you want. Like it bodes true on defense 1,000%. And so, overall, right, macros of this Chargers team, continuity on defense. They're able to plug in the huge hole that was left from Odafe Owe leaving and from Jesse Minter leaving. Both of those were filled with guys who should be immediate impacts. They filled in with youth. They have veterans as well. So you hope you can stay roughly status quo. Hell, maybe get better on defense. On offense, we talked about how gigantic a leap that we could see from 2025 to 2026. If they can keep Justin upright, if they can get the ball out faster than the folks can get to him, if the guys in front of him can block and the guys around him can catch and run, I mean, again, there's a reason why people are bullish about this Chargers team. And yes, you could talk about Durbin, you could talk about Justin and Harbaugh, and you could talk about Ladd and Amari and they are star-studded, right? Like they've got dudes. But what makes this team special and what gets me excited about this team, I'm trying not to suck in the hopium this year. I'm really trying.
Good on you. Somebody has to be the pessimist of this group.
And I'm not even being a pessimist, but like
I'm kidding.
I was. But what I'm realizing
somebody has to keep their feet on the ground.
There aren't that many weaknesses on this roster, like in totality. Are there weakest links? Sure, every team has one. But if I look at a team and say, what is the weak point of this entire team?
It's not that low of a bar.
Like, it would be a position, maybe
Sure.
guard, which is question mark.
Just the offensive line in general, just stay healthy. That's really going to be the...
Yeah. Again, we talked about kind of the question marks or the potential with the linebackers. Like, otherwise, like, you know what you're getting and then some.
Exactly.
Like,
in Dan's mind, if linebacker is the lowest bar of the defense, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because
and
it
if
really
one
isn't
position
that
group,
low of a bar.
if one position on the offensive line is the problem, is it great? No, but that is so far from what it was. Like, good Lord. You go out and you bring in Keaton Mitchell along with Amari Hampton and Vidal. Like, there's reasons why people are excited both locally and nationally, inside the building and outside of the building. While they have them being AFC West crowned, like, I get it. And also, it's time, right? Like, this is why Jim Harbaugh was brought in. It is time. So do I think they are done? No. I think they're going to bring in some more players. Again, look at the edge position. Either I think someone gets cut or someone doesn't make it or someone's traded. Potentially offensive line, potentially receiver we've talked about. But look at the underbelly. Do I foresee a starter coming in? Probably not. But do I see someone who can come in and provide valuable time and valuable snaps as depth piece? 1,000%. So, Jake, we did offense, we did defense. Any parting words? This is a fun one. I'm actually more excited about the defense than I thought I was going to be going through all this, which is a good thing.
Yeah, again, when you go through it like this and you break down the framework for what it looks like, it's so much different once you get the free agent period and the NFL draft out of the way. And to where you're actually now in OTAs, you know who's on the roster, you know that Joe Ortiz never stops churning. So could there be something on the horizon? We'll see. Do I foresee it to happen before training camp? No. Do I foresee it to happen end of preseason? Maybe. But in terms of what you've got right now, again, as Dan said at the top, this feels so much different than going through the overhaul and more so the offensive scheme and philosophy that you had on the offensive side of the ball. It's about continuity, but still trying to find ways of how do you make it better? Who's going to exceed expectations for this defense? I think you have a number of ways to do it, given the responsibility that Chris O'Leary knows that he has in replacing Jesse Minter, but also his familiarity and his energy that's already been established with this team. I honestly think, I go back again to what I said at the top when he was hired. In the big picture of things, I don't know if you could have found a better match to blend with this. Yes, is it a first-time defensive coordinator in the league? Yes. Is it a pretty fast rise to go from where he was 2 years ago as a safeties coach to now the defensive coordinator of the Chargers? Sure it is. Not saying that you're not going to have some pitfalls every now and again. But in the big picture of things, I think that Chris O'Leary is going to fit this team like a glove. Players are going to respond to him extremely well. And I think that he's going to have some things that we maybe, for as much as we said about Jesse Minter and how much we relished in his greatness as a defensive coordinator, there was always things that you'd probably wonder to say, like, well, why did he do this? Why did he do this? Why didn't he do this more? Those are going to be the gaps that I think that Chris O'Leary is going to focus on filling. And that should be exciting.
Is it June? Is it July? Is it August?
We're starved.
I'm so ready.
We are starved.
I'm ready. But yeah, we'll get into some of the OTA takeaways and stuff on the next episode. We'll go into some of the key storylines as we ramp that part up. But Jake, this is a fun one. And enlightening to say the least, but we'll see how this kind of transpires as the weeks go on. But I think this defense is in good hands. It really is. You look at the coaching staff, we talked about it nauseum. Look at the players, the veterans, the high draft picks that they brought in here, the proven talent up and down this roster. The sky's the limit for this defense. And it'll be up to Chris O'Leary to kind of fill those shoes of Jesse Minter and take him to the heights that we all hope that they can get to. But until the next episode, Jake Hefner to my right. Is that right? Yeah, to my right. There we go. I'm Dan, this is Chargers Unleashed. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next. Like Chargers Unleashed.